Hello there. We are going to get started with the next video in your National Board Preparation course. And this time we are going to focus on evidence-based scoring and what you should be focusing on over the next couple of weeks in the summer in order to collect evidence to begin writing your portfolios. Just to give another overview for the scoring components, this pie chart demonstrates that 40% of your total score will come from the work done at the assessment center, which will consist of constructed response items, CRIs, and then selected response items, which will be your multiple choice questions. So that will be taken next spring towards April, May, or June. And as you can see, that is 40%, but this course over the summer is meant to help you prepare for that as well. In knowing your standards, you can complete those items to the best of your ability. The next components is really where we will focus on evidence-based scoring and collecting adequate evidence, and that's the portfolio sections. So you will complete 3 different portfolio entries. Component 1 or component 2, focus on differentiation in instruction. That will be the first one that we will start with and give you a good taste on how to collect evidence and know your students. Component 3, we will move on, and that is where you will be videotaping yourself and reflecting upon best practices. And then component 4 is your ability to be a reflective practitioner and participate in professional learning communities to meet an identified student need and reaching out to those colleagues that can help you achieve that need. So again, this is nothing new. This is just, again, to show the breakdown for where that evidence-based scoring will be most important. Quickly revisiting the five core teaching propositions. These are all ideas and things that as educators are nothing new to us, but these standards will actually help guide the way that you think and develop the lesson and choose the lessons that you are going to showcase your pedagogical abilities in over the course of the next 2 years. So if you kind of look at this circle, it really all starts with teachers know their students and the content that they teach. They develop a respectful environment and being cognizant of those diverse students that they have to teach. In order to refine your craft, becoming a member of a learning community to figure out new ways and better ideas of teaching the content that you have been tasked to teach. And then finally, that reflection. So after making an instructional decision and collecting data, can an educator successfully sit back and determine if your teaching practices were successful? So we're going to keep these in the back of our head and really relate different ways that we can collect evidence in each of these 5 core propositions moving forward. So National Board has demonstrated their commitment to evidence-based scoring and using evidence provided by you as the teacher as the judgment for how well you align to the standards in your content area. So you can see here the direct quote from National Board that again reiterates that it is based on the evidence that you submit. And each piece of evidence that you submit gives the assessors a chance to see the work that you do and evaluate the decisions that you make and how you reflect on those decisions that you made yourself. For when we are scoring, we have been told that you should think of this, that you'll be scored by a jury of your peers that have the same content knowledge, the same area of certification as you. So they will be speaking your language, which is super helpful for all the acronyms that you will be including in your written commentaries. Okay. So really the important piece is here, the assessor cannot read your mind. They can only provide a score based upon what is provided to them. The best piece of advice is to do not make them infer or assume the steps that you took to arrive at an instructional decision or a reflection, but rather you must state the obvious and connect them to the dots of what practices you chose, who you contacted to make those decisions, and finally, was your instructional decision effective based on data that you gathered from your students? So how do you determine what to use as evidence? Well, really anything that you can talk about from any like the different facets from your classroom, whether it was academic and quantitative, so things that you can demonstrate with a pre-test and a post-test in terms of student growth, the student's ability to give themselves feedback or to give their peers feedback. Again, by collecting writing samples would be a great way to demonstrate that student's improvement, and you can talk about why it has been an adequate improvement for that student. Feedback provided that you provide to students or that students provide to you on your teaching abilities. And then finally, what accommodations you could have used in the classroom for a particular student. From the other side of things, so from a socio-emotional standpoint, determining that your mindset has changed as an educator or your student's mindset has changed based upon actions that they completed or you completed. Different approaches to learning, so different strategies that you have utilized and how they have benefited you in your classroom. Your participation in different professional learning communities or your students' participation in events based upon curriculum or activities that you have introduced in the classroom. And finally, cooperative learning, which in my opinion is a very, very broad term depending upon what area of education you're in. But I think of cooperative learning as working with others outside of your content area or encouraging students to go work with individuals that they consider partners in their learning, which could be parents, mentors, etc. But at the end of this, you do have a page limit, and we'll talk more about those in the coming months. So when you're choosing evidence, it's important to think and collect pieces of evidence and share those that demonstrate the greatest impact on student learning. Because again, that's kind of the end of the circle here, where everything that you do should come back and positively impact that student's ability to learn. When displaying your evidence, these three words will be provided very, very frequently or discuss the need to provide evidence in this format. So we refer to these as the 3 C's, so clear, consistent, and convincing. This will be the feedback that you get from the assessors when your components are graded, but it will just say provide more clear evidence or provide more consistent evidence or provide more convincing evidence. So they won't go through specifically and say this piece was good, this piece was bad. They will just go through and count the number of times that they thought things were clear, consistent, and convincing. So for clear, again, think about painting a fairly detailed picture in as few as words as possible. So accurate and precise. So we are not completing fluffy writing. This is very direct to the point because, again, you are limited with your space, and just enough detail to give the assessor the picture of where you are teaching the students that you are educating in your classroom, and very, very fact-based on how this is impacting your teaching or student learning. So that's the clear. Think about setting the stage very neatly and concisely. The why. So this gives a peek into the thought process that you went through before providing this lesson or developing an assessment. This is things that we always have a thought process as teachers, but this is the chance for you to explain, I made this decision, why? Because I saw this student struggle, I decided to do this. Again, things that we all think about in our head and instinctively just go and act upon. But if it's not in writing, we are not telling that story. Okay. So again, explains the significance and explains so what. So I saw the student was struggling and changed his seating location in the classroom so that student could be more attentive to instruction. Okay. So that interprets and justifies why we did what we did. And finally, the impact. So I just talked you through a good example of a problem I identified in my classroom, what I did to change it, but then this is where, again, some people will lose points because they don't bring it back full circle and talk about